right, we're going to talk about factoring trinomials. I think this is day 10. So there's lots of different ways to factor a trinomial, but I think it's always good to build on something that you already know. So I'm going to show you the method that's factoring by grouping because it's something you've already done. If for some reason this doesn't make sense to you, please let me know because I can always show you a different method. Let's start with a simple one. So I'm going to start with x squared plus 5x plus 6. So the first thing you do is you take a look at the a value and the c value. Remember, it goes ax squared plus bx plus c. So the number in front of the x squared is a, and the number in front of the x is b, and the number here is c. So you're going to take a and c and multiply them together. So in this case, I just have a 1. So I have 1 and 6, so that's just going to be 6. And then I'm going to make a little chart. I'm going to multiply I'm going to try and find all the factors of 6 I can think of. So 1 and 6, 2 and 3. I can't think of any others. And then I'm going to see which one, if I add or subtract these numbers, would possibly get me to my middle one, which is a 5 or a 5x. Well, let's see. In this case, I kind of have options. I could go -1 and a +6. That would get me to a +5. Or I could go +2 and +3, and that would get me to a 5. So I have to check this sign here. I need to make sure if I multiply these together, I'll still get that last term. Well, -1 times 6 would give me a -6, so that one won't work. 2 times 3 would give me a +6, so this one will work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write this middle term. Instead of writing it as a 5x, I'm going to write it as a 2x plus a 3x. So I'm going to start again with x squared. But now instead of writing this as 5x, I'm going to write it as 2x plus 3x. And then I'm going to finish my trinomial here with the +6. You can see I haven't changed this middle term. All I've done, instead of writing it as a 5x, I've written it as 2x plus 3x. Now I'm going to do what we did when we did grouping. I'm going to take a look at those first two terms, and I'm going to say, what can I take out of there? Well, they don't share a number, but they both share an x, so I can take out an x. When I do that, I'm left with x plus 2. I'm going to take a look at the next two numbers, and if this is a plus, this will be a plus. Well, I can take out a 3, and when I do that, I'm left with x plus 2. We know factoring by grouping works because those parentheses are exactly the same. The stuff I took out is my first factor, and the stuff that's in parentheses only listed once is my second factor. So now I have factored this trinomial. Let's try another one. Let's try one that's a little bit more complicated. 5x squared plus 22x plus 8. Now, as always, you should always ask yourself, is there a greatest common factor that I can take out? Because if you can, then you should always do that first. But again, when I have 5, 22, and 8, there's no greatest common factor between those numbers, and this doesn't have an x, so I can't take out an x. So that's all I can do. So now I'm going to multiply my a and my c value together to get 40. I'm going to write all the multiples of 40 I can think of. So I usually start with 1 and 40, and I go down 2 and 20. It's not divisible by 3, 4 and 10. It's divisible by 5 and 8. It's not divisible by 6. Not divisible by 7. We already got 8. Divisible by 9. Nope. And divisible by 10, but we already had that. So I think we have a comprehensive list here. Then we're going to say, all right, which numbers, if I add or subtract these together, which one could possibly get me to 22? Well, 1 and 40, that could be 41 or it could be 39, but that's not going to get me to 22. 20 and 2 could certainly get me to 22. 4 and 10, that couldn't do it. 8 and 5, that's not going to do it. So this looks like the one I should use. So I'm going to rewrite my equation as 5x squared. I'm going to write my first term down. But instead of writing 22x, I'm going to write 2x plus 20x. And then plus 8. Now, it doesn't matter what order you write these in. You could have written this as 20x plus 2x. It will come out correctly either way. So it doesn't matter which one you would put first. You're going to take a look at your first two, and you're going to say, what can I factor out of there? Well, there's no common denominator for the number, but there is for the variable. So I can take out an x, and I'll be left with 5x plus 2. I'm going to take a look at the next two. Well, it looks like I can take out a 2, but I can take out, and you want to take out the greatest common factor, so I can take out a 4. And when I do that, I'll be left with 5x plus 2, which is good because you want those parentheses to be the same. So the stuff I took out, x plus 4 is my first factor, and the stuff in parentheses, 5x plus 2, is my second factor. And so now you factored it. Let's try one more that's got a negative sign or a minus sign in there. We have 6x squared minus 23x plus 10. Once again, you can't find a greatest common factor, so you're going to just go ahead and multiply your first and your third number together. You get a 60. You can write down all the factors of 60 you can think of. 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 goes into that 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10. I think we've got a good list there. And we're going to see which one of these will possibly get us to a negative 23. Well, that doesn't look like it, but this 2 and 30, nope, that wouldn't do it either. 3 and 20, that would do it. 4 and 15, that could get me to 19, but 17, nope. So none of these look like it works. So 3 and 20 looks like my best bet. In order to get to a negative 23, I need this to be a negative 3 and a negative 20. So I'm going to rewrite this as 6x squared minus 3x minus 20x plus 10. Again, I didn't change this middle term. Just instead of writing it as negative 23, I wrote it as negative 3x minus 20x. I'm going to take a look at the first two. Well, I can take out a 3, and I can take out an x. When I do that, I'll be left with 2x minus 1. I take a look at the next two. Remember, if this is minus, this will always be minus. And it looks like I can take out a 10. And when I do that, I'll be left with, a 2x minus 1. Remember, the negative times the negative is what will give me a positive. So make sure you check, make sure your signs are correct. And remember, these two parentheses have to be the same. So my factors are what I took out, 3x minus 10, and what I have in parentheses, 2x minus 1. So now I have factored that trinomial. We'll do one more. I have x squared minus 12x minus 28. So now I'm going to see, can I take out a greatest common factor, which I can't. I'm going to multiply my a and my c values. I ignore the sign. I just do them as positive. So 1 times 28 will be 28. I'm going to write down all my factors, 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 3, nope, 4 and 7, not 5, not 6, 7, and 4 we already have. So this looks like a pretty comprehensive list. 1 and 28. Well, if I make either of these positive or negative, I'm never going to get to negative 12x. 4 and 7, 2 and 14. Well, if my 14 was negative and my 2 was positive, then I would get to negative 12. So that one could work. 4 and 7, if they were both negative, I'd only get to negative 11. So those aren't going to work. So it looks like this is the pair that would work. So I'm going to rewrite this equation now. X squared. This one is a plus 2x. This one had to be a minus 14. Again, I didn't change this middle term. 2x minus 14x gives me the 12x. I'm going to take a look at the first two and see what I can factor out. I can factor out an x. I'll be left with x plus 2. If this is a minus, this has to be a minus. It looks like I can factor out a 14. Now I'll be left with x minus 2. Again, remember, this has to be a plus 2, sorry. A negative times a positive will give me my negative, so that way you can always check to make sure your signs do work. X plus 2 and x plus 2, those are the same. So now that means that your factors are x minus 14 and x plus 2. And now you've factored that trinomial. If you have any questions, let me know.